Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. While you're at it, if you are a YouTube user, make sure you enable notifications so it lets you know every time a new episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast goes up live. While you're at it, if you are sick and tired of spending $60 to $100 for the latest and greatest wrestling video game, stop immediately. Go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook. Create your wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation from top to bottom, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to Facebook users totally free. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, you want your name in the shoutouts like our buddies Harold in St. Louis and Mike in Lansdale, then check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast. Sign up today. Don't forget we have loyalty rewards. $15 a month contributors get to co-host an episode of one of our live shows with me, and our $7.50 per month contributors also get entered into a drawing to co-host an episode of one of our live shows. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. If you have questions, you have comments, things you want us to talk about in an upcoming episode, please give us a shout at the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. It is a talk-to-text service. You talk, it texts it to me, and we can address your questions in a future episode. If you happen to be tuning in during one of our live shows, make sure you use whatever chat function is enabled in that streaming service, and your questions come directly to us, and we can get your questions right in one of our live shows. If you are new to the Pro Wrestling Podcast, you've never listened before, we want to welcome you to the show, and make sure you shoot over to our homepage at frowrestling.com, where you can preview all the topics coming to the episodes of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. Tonight, lots of things to talk about. We're going to start off right away with a headline conversation. The Undertaker stirring all kinds of questions today by removing all references to World Wrestling Entertainment or WWE from all of his social media accounts. Now, there are some websites that are reporting that he has done this before. He's done it on Instagram. Now it's on Twitter. It's on Facebook. It's everything that he has social media has removed all references to WWE. Now, there has been conversation lately that The Undertaker is not in the plans for WrestleMania. And let's face it, that is the one time every year that you can always bank on The Undertaker being there. And this year, it is looking more and more likely that The Undertaker will not be participating. My understanding is that all of the top spots on the card, from the main event to the co-main events, the World Championships, the Intercontinental, the United States, all these plans are already in place, and none of them include The Undertaker. Now, those plans could obviously change anytime they want. If they can come up with a compelling storyline, which I've said on previous podcast episodes, I think a match with Aleister Black would be a fantastic idea. I think a match with AJ Styles would absolutely be worth it. There are several other talents that he could work with. Finn Balor, who could really benefit from the rub of wrestling a WrestleMania match with The Undertaker. Or, let's go with this. If Roman Reigns is nearing a return to the ring by WrestleMania season, would it not make sense to have Roman Reigns involved in some kind of altercation but not be able to perform yet, and for The Undertaker, the man he defeated at WrestleMania, to step up to the plate and take on whoever that challenger is to defend the honor of Roman Reigns out of respect for the fallen warrior? There's a lot that they could do with that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's up to WWE to make a move. Now, I understand they're trying to have almost like a youth movement. They're putting a lot of effort, a lot of time into their expansion around the world. We're going to get into some of that a little later in the show, but right now, wrestling fans, The Undertaker is still fresh in their mind, and let's face it, the match at Crown Jewel, the tag team match, the Brothers of Destruction, Kane and The Undertaker versus the reformed D-Generation X, Shawn Michaels and Triple H, was not the match we want The Undertaker to go out on. It was not a high-quality match. Triple H got hurt during the match. Shawn Michaels had to carry a match after being out of the ring for years. Now, the match came off relatively well considering what they are, but it was nothing like a real Undertaker match. And you got to understand, after having the match 3 years ago, whatever it was, where he finishes up at WrestleMania, takes off his gear, leaves it in the ring, such an emotional moment, to come back, wrestle another WrestleMania match that really didn't mean a whole lot against John Cena last year, and then to go out at Crown Jewel, that would be an insult to the legacy of the Ultimate Warrior. I said the Ultimate Warrior. Wow. To The Undertaker. What I would like to see is something where he comes back. He doesn't have to work a 25-minute match. It would be nice to see him work a match with somebody who could really benefit from being in the ring with him. Now, as I'm saying that, who would that be? I've already mentioned a few people that I would suggest, but WWE is in the process of catapulting talent to the top of the roster because of a lot of the competition is potentially coming from AEW. It's going to make it so WWE has to be a little more creative, and maybe part of that program is not to push older, more part-time stars. I suspect that Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar will lose their championships at WrestleMania because they want to feature their championships on the brands that places like Fox News and Fox Sports or whatever are going to be broadcasting their shows. I'm sure Fox Sports 1 is going to have some WWE programming later this year. Raw is right now trying to resurge back into the ratings boom like it was a couple years ago. And if you're going to do those things, you can't continue to put the focus on old talent. You got to start growing some people for the future. And I think right now WWE may sour on the idea of pushing a former superstar who's clearly in the twilight of their career, who cannot move in the ring like they used to. And they may want to instead push somebody who is maybe younger, faster, maybe not the name brand recognition of The Undertaker, but somebody that they could build for the future. That would be perfect for someone like Aleister Black, the Velveteen Dream, Adam Cole, people who are in NXT who need a call-up. Even Lars Sullivan, who, in our update to Lars Sullivan's situation, was supposed to be at Raw last week and SmackDown last week and still has not returned to the company. I understand the guy has anxiety issues, and I can respect that, and I understand he needs some time to get himself together. I get it, but at some point, Vince McMahon has a long memory, and this is going to be a situation where Vince is going to say, no, we're not pushing this guy. Move him back down, maybe even release the guy if he can't handle the pressures of being a top draw on a WWE show. He was in line to face John Cena, the former face of the franchise, for 15 years, and it was really going to put him in a great spot to be a monster heel coming out of WrestleMania. Instead, we don't even know if we're ever going to see the guy again because of the anxiety issues. And I'm not saying it to knock him. If you've got anxiety issues, more power to you. Please get healthy. But if he wants to remain a professional wrestler, he's going to have to find a way to work through these things, or that career is going to pass him by. And he's not going to get a lot of opportunities. All Elite Wrestling may want to sign a bunch of guys, but people they don't want to sign are people they can't be relied on. And this right now is a situation where Lars Sullivan can't be relied on. Speaking of All Elite Wrestling, apparently they are ready to make a big-time offer to a current WWE superstar. Websites have speculated all over the internet who that is. E-Wrestling News and Wrestling Inc. have both speculated that that person is Randy Orton, and that Randy Orton, when his contract comes due, it was reported back in 2010 that his contract that he signed was a 10-year deal, which would make him a free agent in 2020. He may want to negotiate an early release. He may want to work out the end of his contract, but it sounds like Randy Orton is open to talking to them. Perhaps because he's pretty much done anything he can do in WWE. There's not a lot of creativity left for a guy who's been in the company since he was, 19, 20 years old. And now, what do you do with him? He's a multi-time world champion. I'm sure he's a first ballot Hall of Famer whenever they decide that he's on the ballot and all that. But what do you do with him right now? I mean, he's in this weird place where he's a bad guy, but he's kind of a good guy when he's attacking Samoa Joe. But, it's a weird situation. Still being a heel going against Mustafa Ali on SmackDown. You don't really know what's going on with Randy Orton's character. And let's face it, he's not going to stay young forever. All right, the guy's getting up there. He needs to, if he's going to make an impact in the wrestling world, it needs to be sooner than later. And maybe All Elite Wrestling is where he can do that. He's pretty much done everything you can think to do in WWE. It may be time for a change. What if it's not All Elite Wrestling? What if Randy Orton says, listen, I hear all this stuff about New Japan or Ring of Honor. Maybe I'm going to go there. Maybe it'll give me a lighter work schedule. I'm getting older. I don't have to have the same workout regime that I've had my whole life. I could take it a little more easy. I don't know. I can't profess to know what goes on in the mind of Randy Orton. But what I can tell you is I can't see a fresh match for Randy Orton on the brand, either brand, Raw or SmackDown, anytime in the near future unless they establish some really new people. Maybe against EC3 at some point. I would pay to see that. Maybe Velveteen Dream. Again, it's like rehashing the same conversation as The Undertaker. These NXT guys are the only real fresh matches Randy Orton can have. They've wrestled with everybody. So what do you do with him? Maybe it's better to let him go and let him go to All Elite Wrestling where he can revive his career and then come back in a couple years when he's still a top draw but doesn't have to be world champion or even in that conversation anymore. Have to wait and see. WWE also is concerned about losing one of their premier tag teams. In April of this year, WWE already has to worry about the contract of AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, but now the Usos, Jimmy and Jay Usos contracts come up due at the April deadline, just like many of the other contracts. And word is WWE is concerned that they may make the move to All Elite Wrestling, where there has been, it's well documented, they're going to put a big focus on tag team wrestling with the Young Bucks, with SoCal Uncensored and other teams that they're trying to bring in. Chucky T and Beretta apparently are looking at going there. Jimmy Havoc signed with them this week. They're looking at putting together a great roster. The Usos would really bolster their tag team division and give it some legitimacy from day one. So WWE has to get on top of this. We reported last week that they've been trying to sign talent to longer term contracts, really lock people in for the long haul. But at the end of the day, if you're not giving them something creative to work with that they're interested in, it really doesn't matter how much money you offer some of these guys. Yes, there's going to be people who are motivated by the money, but there's a lot of those talents who realize you could make a very, very generous living on the independent scene or in a place like AEW where Chris Jericho got the richest contract offer of his career, and you could get a much better work schedule and potentially work outside projects. I think for some people, that's the draw. That's the attraction to AEW. And WWE has to really concern themselves with whether or not that's going to happen. Another guy who's frustrated in WWE, Rusev. He was having a conversation this week about how he's frustrated with the Rusev Day direction. You know, he wanted this thing to take off. He wanted to be a draw, and he voiced some very candid opinions about WWE, referencing how hard he works and how much he always tries to catch Vince's eye, and he comes up with things and he's creative, and no matter what he does, he doesn't seem to move up or down the card. He's just kind of stuck in limbo, and he feels like he's a great wrestler. He feels like he puts on a good match and a good show, but he's spinning his wheels. He's going nowhere. And it's surprising to me that WWE hasn't acted on these people speaking out so much. But you know they kind of can't. Right now, the wrestlers have a lot of the power, with All Elite being there, and Ring of Honor starting to pay some good money, Impact Wrestling trying to resurge, New Japan trying to expand into the United States, and Lucha Underground planning to possibly announce a 5th season. You have to wonder if WWE, really, they're in a bad spot. When these contracts are coming due, when people are frustrated like Rusev, they better do something to make people happy. I don't understand this sudden Rusev turning heel again situation. He was over with the crowd with Rusev Day. More so when they were with Aiden English. He did reference this week in that interview that he was frustrated that they broke away from Aiden English so soon. But at the end of the day, he was getting over organically, and I think that bothers Vince McMahon. Vince wants to push the things that he creates, and he didn't create Rusev Day. This was something that was supposed to be a one-off, a one-week thing, and it took off, and people loved it. So maybe that's why Vince didn't support it. Maybe that's why it hasn't been featured much on WWE television. I think that's a huge miss for WWE. Impact Wrestling making a major announcement this week. They have a show coming up the week of WrestleMania called United We Stand. And at that event, they aren't saying who, but a former Impact Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion will headline the show. Now, the rumors are already out there that they're talking about either James Storm, who has talked about potentially coming to WWE, or Austin Aries, who left after Bound for Glory in a very public display of frustration with his character, the ending of his contract, giving up the Impact Championship to Johnny Impact. We'll have to wait and see who that is. But the fact that they're building it the way they are, if you go down the list of former Impact Wrestling champions who aren't under contract anywhere else, there's not a lot to choose from other than Austin Aries and James Storm, who would be believable. Mr. Anderson, not an attraction, not somebody who's going to headline. If you look down the list, Rob Van Dam, well past his prime, not a headliner anymore at any stage right now. He'll make a sporadic appearance here and there, but he's not coming back to wrestle for anybody full time. You know, Bully Ray working with Ring of Honor, so there's not a lot to choose from. So hopefully they figure you could do whatever you'd like to try to calculate. Magnus is out there, but he's the NWA champion, and I don't see the NWA wanting to align with Impact after the way things went down with Billy Corgan a couple years ago. So it really doesn't leave a lot of options. I think it's either James Storm or it's Austin Aries. I'm pulling for Aries because I still want to see James Storm in a WWE ring. Have to wait and see what happens. Maybe some WWE Hall of Fame spoilers out there. Many websites reporting that the first inductees to the 2019 WWE Hall of Fame will be Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and Jimmy Hart, going in collectively as the Hart Foundation. I thought it was funny that when you read the press releases on these different websites, that they cited that Danny Davis, who was accompanied the Hart Foundation for a match at WrestleMania 3 and had a very short stint with the Hart Foundation, as well as Davey Boy Smith and Owen Hart, who were with the Hart Foundation, Brian Pillman, were with the Hart Foundation when they had that resurgence in the late 90s, right before the Montreal incident. Like, none of those people are going to be inducted as part of the Hart Foundation. Just Neidhart, Bret Hart, and Jimmy Hart, which I think is fitting. I know some people are frustrated. They want to see the Bulldog and Owen Hart in there. I get it. I do too. Brian Pillman, like to see him in there. I do too. But you got to do the Hart Foundation just as the tag team. That's just the way it ought to be. I expect WWE will probably make that announcement in the next week or two, because that's typically what they do. They try to get to Elimination Chamber and then they start really turning on the Hall of Fame induction announcements. But I think what a great pair to go in. I'm sure Bret Hart will be very emotional during the acceptance speech. Jimmy Hart probably will as well. And it'll be a beautiful moment to see Jim the Anvil Neidhart get the respect that he deserves. A definite WWE Hall of Famer. Kenny Omega in the news this week. Did he tip his hand a little bit at what he's going to be doing now that he is officially a free agent? He, in the latest Being the Elite episode, he's talked about potentially breaking away from the Elite. Now, I'm not saying that that's hinting that he'll go to WWE. I did see on his Twitter feed, people were asking the question, and he was having conversations about he has choices to make, and the Jacksons were saying, you know, they were basically giving him their blessing, but I still think he's going to All Elite Wrestling, but I would love to see him in the WWE ring. I know WWE botches a lot of these appearances, but here's the reality. He is on the level of AJ Styles coming in, and they didn't botch AJ Styles. You got to give credit where it's due. I know people hate the way WWE books a lot of these people. They bring up from 205 Live or from Impact Wrestling, or I'm sorry, from NXT. But you got to give credit where credit's due. When they brought up AJ Styles, they put him right on the main roster, and he was an instant success. Kenny Omega would do the same. When they move talent from the NXT to the main roster, certain ones have obviously fizzled and done nothing. And I know people hate the Nakamura, the way they've played through him for the last year. But let's be honest, when he first debuted on the main roster, when he came out right after WrestleMania with The Miz and Maurice were in the ring making fun of John Cena, and they hit his music the first time, one of the biggest eruptions I've ever heard from a SmackDown crowd. There are reasons this would be a great get for WWE, and it's not just so they could take something away from All Elite Wrestling. If I was them, I would make the richest contract offer you possibly can for Kenny Omega, just because of the injection of life and new storylines you could put in WWE program that have never been told before. I still expect him to go to All Elite Wrestling, but keep your eyes on the episodes of the Being the Elite and see if it tells us what's going to happen. They do have an announcement coming this week. Something major, probably about StarCast, which this week, breaking news, the first two headliners for StarCast 2 have been announced. WWE Hall of Famers Sting and Bret the Hitman Hart will be at StarCast 2. I find that an amazing way to really start promoting that program. I've already sent my feelers out to Cody and the Young Bucks. I did the same thing last year, asking for permission to promote StarCast on my website, ProWrestling.com, which they graciously granted me last year. I expect they'll probably do it again this year, and hopefully the show will be great. I want to see as many talents there. I love for people to get out and be able to meet and greet these people and take some pictures and have a good time with these legends, but who bigger than Bret Hart and Sting to kick off the StarCast 2 event announcements? Moving on, Triple H, his status ahead of WrestleMania is very much up in the air. We've talked about it for weeks, but now Sports Illustrated is reporting that he is not going to be medically cleared in time for WrestleMania. Now, I know the story's not written yet. They may test him all the way up to the week before the show, but they wanted to build a program around he versus Batista. It looks like that is not going to happen, but the word coming out of the back is they are working on an alternative plan for Batista. Now, who do you put him against? If The Undertaker's not going to be there and Triple H isn't going to be there, who can you build a program with Batista against that would be viable? It would be something people would want to see. Do you put him against Bobby Lashley? Since the two both have a mixed martial arts background, they've got the same physique style, very similar wrestling style. Do you put them against a younger person just to give the rub? Do you put them against a Drew McIntyre or somebody like that? Not quite sure. But whatever they do, it should be interesting to see what they do with Batista if Triple H is not able to get cleared in time. Somebody else they got to worry about getting cleared is AJ Styles. Rumor has it he's dealing with a hernia. He insists that's not the case. We'll have to wait and see. But he has been held off a lot of house shows. We do not want to see AJ Styles go down to injury right before WrestleMania season. He is going to be a big part of the WrestleMania plans. It had been reported previously about a month ago that they were planning on having he and Randy Orton have a feud heading into Mania. I don't know if that's still the plan or not. I think that's not the best plan for him. Not that I wouldn't like to see the match. I would, but that to me is more of like a SummerSlam kind of thing. I'd rather see AJ Styles in a much more high-profile match, but we'll have to wait and see where that goes. I would not be opposed to, AJ Styles mixing it up with someone like an Adam Cole or still trying to put together that dream match with Shawn Michaels. Pay Michaels whatever you got to do to make that match happen. People want to see it. And Michaels, even though he was limited in what he did at Crown Jewel, considering how long he was out of the ring, I think he did a phenomenal job. When he talks about how long he felt it after the effects after the match, if you remember, he did a flip off the top turnbuckle onto the Kane and the Undertaker and busted his head right on the floor. That's probably what he was feeling more than anything, and he still was able to finish the match and look great doing it. So I hope they find a way to make that match happen, but I'm not a big fan of the AJ Styles versus Randy Orton match, but that sounds like that's what the plan is, but we got to keep him healthy between now and then. Rey Fenix and Pentagon Jr. apparently have finished up with MLW. They were the MLW Tag Champions for 7 months. They dropped the belts this past weekend to the New Heart Foundation. Davey Boy Smith Jr., Harry Smith, whatever you want to call him, and his tag team partner, Teddy Hart. They had Brian Pillman Jr. at ringside with them. They're the new tag team champions, and they apparently have finished up with MLW, who wish them well in their future endeavors, essentially. And now they're going to be headed to All Elite Wrestling as well, non-exclusive contracts, so they could wrestle elsewhere. But I expect Rey Fenix and Pentagon Jr., the Lucha Brothers, to really bring some excitement to All Elite Wrestling's tag team division. Again, you notice the theme. All Elite Wrestling really focusing on tag team wrestling, something WWE has dropped the ball with for years. And the last topic for tonight's show, WWE is considering some major changes to their Big Four pay-per-views. Historically speaking, you get like the longest pay-per-views of the year are usually the Big Four, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and the Royal Rumble. But now the conversation has shifted to, do we want to have like 2-day events, things that span over a 2-day period of time, shows and matches going on all day at a venue in a city, and really just giving fans an all-encompassing experience. And I think it's a good idea. I just don't know what the logistics would be about people booking rooms and taking what could be a one-night family event and making it this multi-day spectacle. Might be tough to pull off 4 times a year, but that's the conversation. I think it's an interesting prospect. Hopefully they try it out with WrestleMania first and then see if that works, and if it does, maybe they can roll it out to the other 4 or the other 3 of the Big Four. But we'll have to wait and see, but at least they're having that conversation. Along with that, there is rumor that the pricing for the WWE Network may be changing soon. I'm not a fan. I have the WWE Network, but I don't really want to pay more than the $9.99 a month. And hopefully they don't change that. They've talked about in various surveys over the years what fans may want in the network to make the price go up. I want to leave it just the way it is so I can keep watching for my $9.99 a month. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks, as always, goes out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com, where they produce all the music or sound effects we use in any of our shows. Today's podcast, as always, sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen today. And to alleyrepair.com, contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, or your arcade game needs. If you're looking for your next career move, you're considering college, university life, or you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our website, our sister site, frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, as Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. If you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsj101sports.com for their latest articles on the world of professional wrestling, or my blog. Go to frowrestling.com and click on In Fro's Corner for my latest editorial pieces. If you are looking for some independent wrestling action, you want to support indie wrestling, go to my indie events tab on frowrestling.com and look for shows coming to an area near you. Until next time, take care, everybody, and have a great night.